In the past, before the Milan Conference decided to make sign language illegal for deaf schools, ASL was used as the first language for deaf children. They also used the bilingual method for teaching. What were the results of that? Many, if not most, deaf people graduated from the schools had high rates of well-developed literacy. How do we know that? We can go back and look at letters that they wrote or other things that were written and see that they were able to write really well. After the Milan decision, many deaf teachers were either fired or let go and replaced with hearing teachers to help improve speech skills. All the hearing teachers that were hired were trained, but mostly in how to teach speech. They received very little training on how to teach reading, math, and other school skills. The research proved that deaf reading and writing and other skills declined drastically. What did they figure out the problem was? It wasn't the oral only method. It was that deaf students weren't smart enough, or that they couldn't learn how to talk. If they had learned how to talk, they'd be better at school. It was the students that got blamed. Many deaf students failed to learn how to speak, which led to a downward spiral of what they were expected to do. The generations after that and after that, the deaf just kept being seen as failures, and the teachers' expectations lowered and lowered of what they could do. Finally, in the 1970s, sign language became popular again, but in very English formatted ways. I've already explained the problems with C and other English-based systems in other vlogs. You can go look at my other vlogs to see those. Also, though they were allowed to sign now, they were still mostly focused on speech. The philosophy was teach speech first, and if that didn't work, then sign language was used as a backup plan or a last resort. Deaf academics and literacy were still low, and they were still failing, and those low expectations continued. From the 1980s till now, the emphasis has been mainstreaming. Most school districts and parents have decided to send their deaf kids to mainstream schools, not deaf schools, which means the schools for the deaf student population has dwindled. The schools for the deaf have become a dumping ground for mainstream programs. If students are failing in the mainstream, then they're sent to the deaf school. It means that the school for the deaf is now filled with students that are not succeeding. A small minority whose parents are deaf, but most of them will have been mainstreamed, who grew up speaking or using the oral method, and their language skills and academic skills are significantly delayed. The School for the Deaf is having to play catch up, and it's hard to catch up because the brain is so far behind. It's hard to catch up to where it should be. The window of opportunity is over. Now, who's to blame? The mainstream programs? No, it's not their problem, but it's the mainstream education. Truly better? Actually, we don't know. Mainstream programs, by law, are not required to show statistics on desegregating deaf people. Those students in mainstream schools are either lumped into two categories: disabled students, or if the student themselves is fully mainstreamed, they are in with the hearing student population. Our deaf community has a lot of observations and our own intuition. It tells us that mainstream education is probably not better than the School for the Deaf. Maybe it's worse in the mainstream. Of course, averages. I speak of averages. But naturally, some of the students in the mainstream schools are going to be better than the students in the deaf schools. But the average for both populations is low. It's true that the deaf schools can be lousy and don't work. No. We have schools for the deaf. They have good language models, good teaching methods, bilingual teaching methods. For example, the California School for the Deaf in Fremont and the Indiana School for the Deaf, the Learning Center, Maryland School for the Deaf, Texas School for the Deaf is another. We have those. Deaf schools can work, can be successful, and schools for the deaf are necessary for deaf children education, for their language, their emotion, their social development, and so on. We must take care of our schools for the deaf.